always produce, videos that you'd want to watch. A lot of times people go on and on and on about themselves or, whatever it is. And it's like, unless you're a celebrity, people don't care, right? So they want to know what's in it for them. Again, always have your audience in mind. So you want to always hit what is the pain point of the person who's watching up front, give a little credibility about yourself, and then give them some tips that they can take away, right? Something that they can actually do. And every video you do should be pretty short, I'd say under 2 minutes. If you're doing, like tips and things like that, but also make sure that it's packed with information and that you're really giving something that people can do tomorrow.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing, and you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice, and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Paula Rizzo. She's an Emmy Award-winning television producer, a best-selling author, and a media trainer and strategist. She's also co-founder of Lights Camera Expert, which is an online course geared towards helping entrepreneurs, authors, and experts get media attention. Paula has a very long and impressive CV, also being founder of the productivity site listproducer.com and author of Listful Thinking, using lists to be more productive, highly successful, and less stressed. She's also a regular contributor to mindbodygreen.com, entrepreneur.com, and Thrive Global, where she provides productivity tips and advice. Now, one of her focus areas is helping experts, authors, and entrepreneurs position themselves for media, radio, and TV, which is Paula's focus, but this also applies equally well to podcasts and blogs. So that's the focus of our discussion today. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where you'll find a host of free and exceptionally useful information to help transform your marketing. You can access the Transformational Marketing Hub by visiting innovabiz.co/VIP. If you don't yet have an account, click the blue Take a Peek Inside button. As I said, it's free and exceptionally useful. In our discussion today, Paula talked to me about a framework for pitching to the media. She explained how to get comfortable doing video, and it's about focusing on providing a service to your audience. And we talked about list making, all the way from time management to video and interviews to packing for a move. Without further ado, then let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Paula Rizzo. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from New York City in the USA, Paula Rizzo, who's an Emmy Award-winning television producer, a best-selling author, and a media trainer and strategist. She's also co-founder with Terry Trespicio of Lights Camera Expert, which is an online course geared towards helping entrepreneurs, authors, and experts get media attention. Now, Terry told us about that in episode 152, and she suggested we get you on the podcast, Paula. So a big hello to Terry and a big welcome to you, Paula. It's a real privilege to have you here as a guest.
Oh, this is amazing. Thank you for having me.
Now, you've got a very long and impressive CV, also being founder of the productivity site listproducer.com and also author of Listful Thinking, using lists to be more productive, highly successful and less stressed, as well as a regular contributor to mindbodygreen.com, entrepreneur.com, and Thrive Global, where you provide lots of productivity tips and advice.
Yes.
Now, I know I know one of your focus areas, of course, is helping experts, authors, and entrepreneurs position themselves for media, because that's your background, and also including radio and TV. But I think it also applies to podcasts and blogs, and I think you talk about that in some of your material as well. So I'd like to explore that in some more depth with you today. But before we get to all things media, let's find out a bit more about your background. So how did you get to where you were today, to where you are today? And
Sure.
what were some pivotal moments on that journey?
Sure. Well, I've always been a super curious person. I always wanted to know, what was happening behind the scenes. What was that person doing, this person doing? And so I think that's sort of what led me down the career path of the news business. Because I'm always very interested to see, how things tick and what's going on. And I also really enjoy helping people to learn something they didn't already know. And, being in the media for as long as I have been, that's what you're doing every single day, being able to, people turn on their TVs or their radios or whatever it is, and you're informing them of what's happening in their world. And I always love that. That's, to me, television and news media has always been, a public service, or it should be a public service, to be able to help people understand what's going on in their world. So I've always loved that piece, always, storytelling and writing. As a little kid, I always loved to write stories, and I always wanted to write a book. I never knew the book I would write would be about list making, but it is what it is. It's been very fun to meet list makers all over the world. People are very, very attached and obsessed with lists. So that's been a lot of fun.
Okay. So you mentioned, that you're passionate about teaching people something they didn't already know, and you get a big buzz out of that, which I think is awesome, because that when I heard that, I thought, well, yeah, that resonates with me. In terms of deciding from a news point of view as to what information would be of value to somebody, to the audience, how do you go about that? What's the process you go about there?
Sure. It's really of understanding who the audience is and knowing who's watching, right? And so every show I've worked on through the years has been a little bit different. Sometimes the audience was moms. Sometimes the audience was older men. They like very different things. The things that matter to both of those people, very, very different. So it's really understanding who is watching and how can you best serve them. And, and also looking at it from a standpoint of, maybe I'm not interested in this at all, but they would be, and because it's for them, I have to do this story, or I have to find out more about it, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a really great point, understanding the audience first. And I think I imagine you'll agree with me on this, that's really important if you're doing blogging or podcasting or whatever it might be that you're putting out into the world.
Oh, 100%. You have to think through who's going to be watching this, who's going to be listening to this. I teach a lot of people how to pitch media. And it's really, that's the biggest thing, is to understand who is that media outlet serving, because that's what your pitch needs to be highlighting. And the same thing, for your own marketing material, you want to, I have very different lists. I have two totally different mailing lists. One that's all about productivity and efficiency, and one that's all about video and media. I'm not talking to them the same way. I'm sending them different things.
Yeah, well, that's a really good example, because a lot of small businesses in particular get into different areas. They have quite different expertise, just like you have with the lists. That I guess is something, we'll talk about that in a moment, but I guess that's something that came out of how you manage your own time and activities. But then the other part of it, which is the media attention, and then if you were to send both information packages to everybody, then only half of it is perhaps relevant.
Yeah. And sometimes it is, you'll be surprised. There is some, spillover. Some people are interested in both, definitely. And so that's always good. But for the most part, you don't want to annoy people by sending them things that they're like, wait a minute, I thought we were going to talk about how to be more efficient. And now all of a sudden I'm hearing about, how to be better in the media. What does this have to do with each other? And it doesn't, so being mindful of that is really important.
Yeah. Whilst it does for you, and you may use one as a tool to work the other, but it doesn't necessarily connect for everybody.
Exactly right.
All right. So we talked a little bit about what what's of interest to the media. So how do you get, what are your recommendations for getting media attention?
Well, really having an interesting story. A lot of times people think, I can talk about anything that has to do with whatever your expertise is, let's say productivity, but being really, really focused about what you can talk about will get you through the door every single time. So for instance, using lists, right? I didn't write a book and say, I'm writing a book about productivity. Is it a productivity book? 100%. But I used lists specifically to tell the story, to help people, because I was obsessed with them, but also I knew this was a good thing for media. Before I had a book, I had a blog called listproducer.com, and I started getting myself some media, and I started pitching that myself as an expert in list making before I even had a book. I was just a blogger, and I was a producer, obviously. And so that was some credibility there as to how organized I was, and that I was using this technique to be successful in my career. But I knew, to really get any notoriety in this way, I need to show the media that I do this. And then people will also understand and say, oh, she's a credible source. The media says so. And that's how it works. And actually, Terry, who you had mentioned, she and I actually had pitched each other at our various media outlets through the years before we were friends. So that is how we first met. Terry was working at Martha Stewart, one of her magazines, and was pitched to me as an expert when I was working at Fox News Channel in New York. And she came in, she was terrific. I thought she was great. And so I had her back a bunch of times. And then I actually pitched her a story for the magazine that she ran about productivity.
Yeah. So sometimes it's also about using connections. But what I really like about that is, starting off with knowing the audience and what you have to offer them. So what value do you bring to the table for the audience of the media? So you're not thinking about the media as such whilst they're the decision maker. You're focused on bringing value to the audience.
Right. And they want to do good stories. They're looking for interesting things that they can bring to their own audience. So if you can come in and be that person to say, hey, this is going on over here in this neck of the woods. Maybe you're not aware, but there's all these new apps, or there's all these new things that people are now working on, or the dot journal is a really big thing now. Did you know about that? And the journalists might not know because they're not in the world that you're in all the time. But it is, I will note, Terry and I were not friends at the time when we were pitching each other. So we really had to work hard to pass each other's media tests. And, I think that's what makes it so interesting, is that she and I have both been on both sides of this, as someone who has been pitched a whole lot, and then someone who has had to pitch. So understanding, before I pitched her, I went and saw, what is it that she does for that magazine? What are the articles that she writes? What kind of things does she do? And when I saw and I checked it out, I made sure that I tailored my pitch specifically for that. So I wasn't sending her something that was like, oh, here's something that could work in the magazine. No, this works exactly for the types of things that you already cover. So that's really important, is to do your homework and to know who you're pitching. And people don't do that often enough. When I was working at Fox News, I was a senior health producer. So I produced all kinds of health and wellness content, and people pitched me everything else, right? Travel and politics and technology and everything. And it was like, I can't use this. It's a good story, but I can't use it. So understanding who you're pitching is really important too.
Yeah. There's so much I love about that, because to me that is a metaphor for any marketing. And, we talk about the media. How do you get the media's attention was a question that you answered. And it isn't really the media. Yes, you've got to be focused on their audience and what would be of value to their audience, but it's not the media's attention you're getting. It's a person, isn't it? So
sure,
there's a relationship thing you've got to building, and what you said there about understanding, how does that person work, and what will grab that person's interest based on what you can find out about the person and how they work and what kind of things they've put out in the past. So it really is a great metaphor for all kinds of marketing, where you're not dealing with a business, you're actually dealing with a person in that business, and the personal relationship is what's really important.
Right, absolutely. And and also looking at it as how can I help? And the answer is never buy my book, buy my product, hire me. Look, everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants new clients. Everybody wants to sell books, whatever it is. I get it, right? But the media doesn't care about that. They don't want to be a commercial for you. They want to know, what is my audience going to get from this by paying nothing, by just paying their cable bill and turning on the TV and seeing this, right? So what can you give away for free?
That's right. And I think that sort of comes back to the key focus. How can I help the audience, and what do I know? You said earlier about getting your kicks out of teaching people something new. So what is it that I have that might be new to somebody and might be and would be of value then?
Right.
So that's really the approach to take. So I really like that. So thanks for expressing that in a way that I can use it as a metaphor as well.
Great.
So thinking about the person in the media that you need to pitch to get that attention. So you mentioned they get heaps and heaps of proposals, and 90% of them are probably rubbish. So they ignore them. So how do you actually stand out from the noise? How do you get their attention straight up front so that they, whether it's an email or a phone call, or I don't know what the best way to approach somebody in the media would be, but how do you get their attention up front in the first few seconds so that they say, okay, I want to read on, or I want to hear more?
Yeah. I mean, that headline, I call it a headline, but the subject line is really important, so you want to have something in there that's going to catch attention. Think about when you read a magazine or you read a newspaper or something, those headlines grab you to read the rest of the article. That's the point. So you want to write your subject lines exactly the same way. You want to give them something that makes them say, I should open that. Let me see what that is, but you don't want to be overly, you don't want to say something is a breakthrough if it's not, or you don't want to be too over the top. You don't want it to be clickbait. You want to actually be truthful, but also clever. Some of the worst ones that I've gotten through the years as far as subject lines go are the ones that say, can I pitch you? Or expert available, or, those very vague, and I'm never gonna open them. Never ask a journalist a question that they can say no to. Because if you say, can I pitch you? They're going to say no, because they're getting pitched like crazy. And so, really grabbing them with that headline. But there are 3 elements of a pitch that are super important. And then the first is really the hook. So the hook is the timeliness of the pitch. Why now? What is going on in the world that makes this something that we need to talk about now? And sometimes that can be difficult if you have, let's say you're a sales coach or something. And so, what could be right now something that's in the media that you can grab onto? Sometimes that's a little difficult. So you have to be a little bit creative to say, okay, maybe there's something that entrepreneurs have been facing, or there's a statistic or a new study came out or something like that you can dig and say, hey, look, this is a new thing that's happening, or this is a trend and I can talk about it, or something like that. So the timeliness, the hook is the big, a big thing. And then the next part is the twist. The twist is really, how is what you're saying different than what everyone else has said before? Because remember, magazine editors, producers, they've heard everything. They've been doing lots and lots of stories. It's very, very difficult to impress them. So you want to make sure that your information is a little bit counterintuitive. And then the last part is the takeaway. So you're doing, the hook, the twist, and then the takeaway. And the takeaway is really the part that, as a producer, I was obsessed with. What is the viewer going to take away from this? What do they get out of this? What will they do tomorrow? What will their life be like if they start, eating bacon every single morning for breakfast because you told me now it's a good thing? That was the twist. What actually happens? So really thinking through those 3 elements, that's what a producer is looking for in a pitch.
Yeah, that's great advice. And there's a wonderful structure there that you've just given everyone to build a headline, basically. So do you have an example top of mind that you can share with us that is a good pitch or good headline following that principle?
Well, if you think through what could be timely for the year, right? Going through every month, I would tell everyone to just sort of, write down all the months of the year and think through what could be timely in whatever it is that you teach, or whatever your work is. So maybe January, it's Of course, lots of producers and editors are getting new year, new you, right? That's the whole thing. New Year's resolutions, like what's going on in the world around then. February is Valentine's Day. Is there something you can do around that? Or maybe there's a national holiday or something that you can kind of peg whatever you're doing on. For me, for list making, I mean, January has always been my big month because people are always really looking to get more productive and be more organized and all of those things. So I try to hook whatever I do onto that. And I get a lot of media inquiries for that kind of stuff, but something different. You don't want to always hear the same advice over and over again. So how can you kind of freshen it up a little bit, make it a little bit different? The other piece too is that sometimes there are studies and things that come out that the headline's really sexy. It says something really like, oh, people, and then when you read the article, it's like, oh, that wasn't really exactly, what the story was. Can you be the expert that sort of informs the media, right? To be able to say, hey, look, I found this article or I found this study, and at first glance, it looks like it's really, really, cutting edge, but the truth of the matter is it's not, and here's why. Being able to really pick something apart in a, very, smart way, but to showcase your expertise.
Okay, that's an interesting approach too. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned an example there just at the end of something where the headline is really great, but the content isn't quite matching that. So give us some advice around producing online content and how to make it compelling.
Right. So you always want to have whatever video you do, you want your headline to make catch attention, but also you want the video to make good on that headline. So you never want to just grab attention and then not deliver in the video. And I, help a lot of experts to produce videos. And I always say, because it's my background, because I think video is the future and it's here now, always produce, videos that you'd want to watch. A lot of times people go on and on and on about themselves or, whatever it is. And it's like, unless you're a celebrity, people don't care, right? So they want to know what's in it for them. Again, always have your audience in mind. So you want to always hit what is the pain point of the person who's watching up front, give a little credibility about yourself, and then give them some tips that they can take away, right? Something that they can actually do. And every video you do should be pretty short, I'd say under 2 minutes. If you're doing, like tips and things like that, but also make sure that it's packed with information and that you're really giving something that people can do tomorrow. Whether it's how to make a better to-do list tomorrow or how to make a green smoothie that'll be more delicious and healthier for you. Make sure you give them something, and then of course you want to send them to your website or whatever it is, but the purpose of the video is to give away what you know for free.
Yeah, that's a really important tip, I think. And then we were talking before we started recording about being self-conscious going on camera. So tell us a little bit about that and how that's related to that idea of giving some value.
Yes, I spend a lot of my days media training people. So getting them ready to be in front of the camera, whether they're authors or, business owners or whatever, and really getting them comfortable with speaking to a camera. It's awkward. It takes some practice. And that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I have is that you have to practice. People think, oh, I'll put the camera on and I'll be great. Oh, I'm really great in front of a stage, on top of a stage. When I have an hour to talk and give stories and tell things and, give presentations. It's not the same. It's definitely different to be able to speak succinctly about what you know in 15 seconds versus 15 minutes. It's a skill. So give yourself some time to practice. And, also I would say really it's a mindset thing. I recently taught a class, a virtual workshop called Become a Video Star. And it was, filled with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs and business owners. And one woman had said, I really hate video. I'm here because I hate video and I want to learn to not hate video. And I was like, wow, okay. I said, number one, we need to stop saying I hate video. That needs to happen. So start saying you love video. And she did. And she's come probably one of the furthest in the program because she really made that mindset switch early on to say, you know what, I'm going to love this. This is something that I want to do. And when she made that switch, it really helped her. But also to understand that you're being of service to the people who are watching. There was a vegan chef who I had media trained, and she was petrified to be in front of the camera. She really hated it. And she had become a vegan, her and her husband, because her husband was having all kinds of health issues. And I said to her, look, back when your husband was having all these issues, wouldn't you have loved to see somebody on camera say, hey, I have been where you've been. I understand how hard it is. And here's what I did to fix it. And she said, yeah, of course. I said, well, you could be that person for someone else. That's what you need to be doing. You need to be leading with service and saying, I can help somebody. If I put my mug on camera, somebody might see this and might get to the better part of their life sooner. Wouldn't you have liked to have heard this advice sooner? So you could have not had all of those days and months of agonizing pain. She's like, yep, you're totally right. So as soon as she made that mindset switch, that was a big deal. That was a game changer for her.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I often discover things where it hits a nerve so much with me, and I think, where was that when I needed it 5 years ago or so? And you're right to make that shift and say, well, I can be that in a different area to somebody that's in that position where I was 5 years ago.
Right, exactly. It's just a different way of looking at it,
Yeah, and the focus is not on you. So one of the things I struggle with, I'm probably a person that in a conversation like this one-on-one, I'm reasonably comfortable. I can have this conversation and we can have fun and it can be very informative. If I'm speaking, and this is not just video, but video adds the extra level of complexity. But if I'm just talking to the camera and there's no people there, there's nobody asking me questions, or there's nobody answering questions that I'm asking, then I become very self-conscious and it's really hard. I try to imagine myself, try to imagine an audience in front of me behind that camera. But what are your tips about how to put your mind in that position of there is actually an audience on the other side of that camera, and how do you come across just as you would if you were on stage in front of that audience live?
Yeah, it's very difficult there's no energy to feed off of, there's no faces to see or reactions to really go by. So it definitely is, puts you at a disadvantage if you're not used to it. Practicing obviously is one of the biggest ways to do it. There's an app that I love called Marco Polo. And it is a video messaging app. So it's almost like a walkie-talkie, and you can leave video messages for your friends or family. And I suggest that my clients get it a lot of times when they're afraid to be on camera, because it really helps to teach you to be okay with looking into the camera and talking to somebody, because you are actually talking to somebody. You're looking, you're leaving this message for your friend. So it gets you into the mindset of, oh, okay, the camera is a friend. The camera is somebody I want to talk to. So then when you go to record your videos, you've sort of gotten into that mindset of, oh, this is not a big deal. This is just like when I'm talking to somebody on video chat, it does help you to sort of remove that layer of strangeness from this being just a machine looking at you. So that's one tip for sure, is to really practice and try the Marco Polo app. I really like it for that. And the other piece is that to keep your energy up. A lot of times, really smiling, starting the video by smiling before you even say anything, that'll change your whole face. That'll just, make it so that this is not a daunting thing. I mean, hopefully you're not talking about anything too serious, but just to be able to be friendly from the beginning. And then also to keep your energy up. And the way that you keep your energy up is to really project your voice. So if you're in a room, big room, small room, whatever it is, thinking as you're speaking to this camera, can I fill this space with my voice? Because if you can do that, and you're pushing yourself a little bit, sometimes it's awkward, but if you do that, it really keeps your energy up. Like right now, I'm in a room by myself and I'm trying to speak not as loudly, but pretty animated as possible. And that's the trick. You sound more energized and engaged when you're really projecting your voice.
Yeah, there's some great tips there. I really like that. I had a look at the Marco Polo app because when I was doing some research, you did mention it in some of your other interviews. So I had a quick look at that, and that's That's quite neat. I haven't played with it much. I do use Bonjoro quite a bit to send video messages to people. So I guess that's
I don't know that one. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. But the idea of changing your kind of mindset just a little bit in terms of this is just like speaking to a friend I really like that concept. So yeah, great advice. So we'll link to that in the show notes so people can check it out. Now, what's your view? I wanted to ask you what's your view on using a script in video, particularly if you're doing something that's a little bit longer. I mean, 2 minutes is, I find 2 minutes quite easy to memorize what I want to say and do it reasonably comfortably. But when it gets to say 5 minutes or even longer than that, then I'm conflicted as to whether it's better to use a script or just chop it up into a series of 2 minute segments and edit it all together. What's your view on that?
Well, it really does depend on your level of comfort. And, reading off a teleprompter is a different skill. And that takes practice because otherwise people can tell that you're reading. And so you really need to be able to have command of what you're saying. So it needs to be conversational. And I work with a lot of clients where I do help them write their scripts. And a lot of times they'll take something they wrote in an email, or they'll take something that's on a sales page and they'll stick it in a Google Doc and send it to me and say, here's my script. And I'm like, this is not your script. This is something to be read off of an email. It's a total different delivery than if you were to tell somebody this. Broadcast journalism is very different than print journalism. The writing is very, very different. So that, number one, is a big switch for a lot of people. You need to write like you speak so that you're using conversational words that people will understand, that they won't, that you won't get tripped up on. For instance, I had an anchor I used to work with who, he always had a difficulty saying the word especially. He just would get tripped up on it anytime we put it into a script for him. So we'd always have to put particularly. That was always the word switch because it was easier for him to say. So the same thing for you. What words are difficult for you to say? Don't put them in a script. Don't say them, change the word because you want to come off as authentic and as friendly as possible, because that's the thing about video and even audio. It's very intimate. People really want to like you. When they like you, they're going to buy your book, they're going to buy your product, they're going to go to your website, they're going to, you lead with your personality, you lead with yourself. So depending on what your comfort level is, for some people I do say, hey, just memorize just a couple little lines and then edit them together, And I think it's wonderful to invest in an editor. I don't try to teach myself how to edit. Of course, I know how to edit from years in the media, but it's not the best use of my time. I can pay an editor to do it way faster and way better than me so that I can be doing what I'm really good at. So don't be afraid to sort of outsource some of these things.
Yeah, and that's great advice too, because particularly, if you invest the time in improving your own skills on camera, that is much more valuable than learning how to do the editing.
Sure.
All right. Now, the other thing that I wanted to explore with you, because I know you mentioned it on another interview I heard, and I have great difficulty with this. This is how to work on getting rid of the filler words that you use, particularly in this sort of environment where nothing is really scripted. I do have a list, but nothing's scripted in terms of what I say. Now, my favorite filler words are,
yes,
so, and of course, the good old
yeah. Basically is a good one.
Basically, yeah.
There's a lot of good ones. They're very, 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 very common. So don't feel bad about that at all. It is really, as I do media training, when I point it out to people, they're like, wow, I never realized I did that so often. And so one of the things is that once you identify the words that you use so often as filler, and the way that you can do that is by recording yourself, whether it be on audio or video, and just watch it back and say, what does it look like? And then from there, what you're going to do is anytime you feel compelled to say that word in an interview, in, a conversation with somebody, instead of saying it, grab yourself, don't say it, and just pause. Because all you really need is a break. You don't need to fill all the space of the entire conversation. You just need to take a break. Sometimes it's just a breath. Sometimes it's just a pause. whatever it is. But that's a lot of times why you're using those filler words. And it's very common.
Yes, the magic of the pause. And that's something that I need to really work on. And I'm sure a lot of people can empathize with that.
Yes.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about the list work you do then and how that came about.
Yeah. So being a television producer, lots of deadlines, lots of, crazy stuff happening in newsrooms that you have to keep on top of, a lot of balls in the air at the same time, a lot of projects and things like that. And so I really relied on lists to keep me focused and get the newscast on the air every night when, working with my team and all of that. And I was not really doing the same thing at home. I was not using lists in that same way. And I realized that things were falling through the cracks. And I was thinking, hey, I am super successful at work. I'm on top of my game. I know what I'm doing. And yet at home, I'm disorganized and not getting things done the way that they should be. I need a new system. And so it really became evident when my husband and I were looking for an apartment in New York City. And we would walk through the apartment and leave and not remember a single thing. If we saw a wine fridge, we were super excited about the wine fridge, but we would leave and say, oh, wait, how many closets were in that apartment? Or what was the view? So I was very, very unfocused. So what I did was I made a list like I would at work. When I go out in the field and I interview somebody, I would always make a list of questions, a list of shots that I needed to get before I came back to the station. And so I did the same thing with this apartment list. And so then every apartment we went into, we had a very focused look at what questions I wanted to ask. It was very, the checklist really helped us to make our decision. And a friend of mine afterwards said, you know what, can I have that list? Because not other people don't do this kind of thing. They're not making checklists for things like this. And I gave it to her and she said, I think you're onto something here. And this is people are not doing this. So that's, 7 years ago, I started my blog, listproducer.com. And then 4 years ago, Listful Thinking, the book came out.
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm a list fanatic, and I have lists. So I spent 27 years in the corporate world, and a third of my time was traveling. So of course, I needed to be very good at packing all the things I need and get organized and make sure I didn't forget my passport and important things. So I developed lists and I kept refining those lists. And now I drive my wife absolutely crazy when we go on a holiday because she starts packing a couple of weeks in advance and she says, "Are you packed yet?" And the flight's at 7:00 tomorrow morning. We have to leave for the airport at 5 or 4. And I said, well, no, I'll pack tonight because it'll only take me half an hour.
I have the list.
The list. Yeah.
Yes, it's very true. It's very true because, as you know, when you do travel a lot, it's the worst when you forget something imperative and you just kick yourself. Like, how could I forget that? And you know what? Like, you shouldn't have to remember these things. A lot of people who say, oh, I'm cheating if I write it down. Who cares? You use that brain power for something else, not to remember these things.
That's definitely my philosophy as well. Yeah, keep your brain for something creative rather than remembering things that you can keep in a list. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, this is fascinating, and I know you do have a checklist to become a go-to media expert that's available on your website. So
I do. I had to mush together my two favorite things: lists and media. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think one of the really good giveaways that people can offer is actually a list of the things you need to do to be whatever it is you want to be. Mm-hmm. And if they've developed that list, so for example, my wife actually said to me on this last trip we went on, she said, can you send me your pack list and I'll work with it. So people actually value the lists that you've built for something.
It's true. You're converting her. I love it. She sees the value in that. It's working. Great.
Yeah, that's right. Well, as I said, this has been really fascinating. I could go on talking for hours, but I'm respectful of your time. And I think it's time we moved on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round that's designed to help our audience. And they're primarily innovators and leaders in their field to get some tips from your experience. And hopefully, so there's 5 questions and hopefully they'll get some really insightful answers from you and be inspired to go and do something awesome today.
Terrific.
So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Make a list.
Thought that might come up.
Yes. I mean, I do my best brainstorming in list form, I find that that's really helpful to just get it out of your brain and down on paper.
Yeah. I agree with that. I find that often when you make a list, suddenly other things pop into your mind that you didn't necessarily think of before you started making the list. All right. So what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas or new products?
Give myself space, whether that be to just not have, any clients that day or any phone calls, and just have focused time where, maybe I'm going to do some brainstorming or go for a walk or go on a vacation or do something else so that I'm not constantly working. That's the problem, is that if you're always in the doing state, you're never in the innovating state. So to be able to give yourself a little bit of space, some time, even for me, I really make it a point. I've changed the way that I do phone calls, the way that I schedule things so that I have my mornings free to read the newspaper and to look up things that I want to look up and read and all of those things, because I find that helps me to be more creative throughout the day.
Yeah, that's great advice. So separate the doing work or the day-to-day work from time to work on creating new things.
Exactly.
All right. Now, the next one you probably answered. What's your favorite tool or system for improving your productivity and allowing you to be more innovative?
List making. Yes. Yeah. But I will add that I do also like digital list making, some apps and things like that. People always ask, do you handwrite your lists or do you, use an app? And I do both. And I find that there's no one that works better than anybody else, any other one or whatever it is. It's just, what is your productivity style? What do you like best? How do you, work best and really tap into that? And don't download all of the apps at once, because then you won't use any of them, right? Download one, try it for 2 weeks. If it works, then go with it. And if not, delete it and move on.
Yeah, and you'll need a list to keep track of all the apps.
That's right.
Yeah. So what app do you use? What's your favorite?
So for list making, I really like, I like Todoist. I like Clear. I like Asana. I do still like Evernote. But Evernote, I don't really make lists in. I use that more for storage of ideas or, that's where I put all my packing lists in Evernote so that I have it sort of like a trunk that I can go to and always pull things out of. But I really like to keep my lists in specific places, so like, for example, I also use Wunderlist. And in Wunderlist, I only keep lists of things that I need to buy. Right. So if I'm going to the store or I need to replace something or whatever it is, it's always in Wunderlist. That's just my list for that. So for me, I like to compartmentalize in the same way that I keep my keys in the exact same place every day, so I know where to find it. I do the same thing with my lists.
That's great advice. So yeah, I'm a user of Todoist, and we use Asana for Project Manager.
Oh, great.
But yeah, so it's important to know where to find those things, just as your key example there demonstrated. So
Yes.
What's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
Well, I do really love a good spreadsheet, I have to say. I make a lot of spreadsheets for every client that I have. I have a spreadsheet where, when we first start working together, I do say, what are your goals? We're at the end of this time together. Where do you want to end up? So that I can really have them articulate what they're looking to do. And then in that spreadsheet, I keep notes, from every session that we do. What's happening in the session? What's happening next? What have I told them to do next? So that we can sort of track it. And for me, I find it to keep me on track too, to remember. When you're working with a lot of people, sometimes it's easy to forget, how can you best serve this person? And sometimes it's by taking notes and really being engaged in that way. And for me, using a spreadsheet, whether it be through, Google Sheets is usually what I do, or I've started to use, Airtable. I don't know if you've ever used that one before, but it's really, it's really slick. I really like it. There's a lot more you can do with it. And it's really helpful to, just stay organized.
All right. Well, that's great. Yeah. So keeping organized with spreadsheets. And I like the structure of starting with the end in mind and then setting milestones and so on. And of course, spreadsheets work really well with that. Now, for those that don't know Airtable, it's essentially takes spreadsheets to the next level, so you can actually interrelate them and build relational databases with it almost, which makes it almost a super list tool, because you can pick out one aspect of the spreadsheet and dig down in information related to just that aspect.
Yeah, I find it so useful. I just used it actually because I was looking for a virtual assistant. And so I used it to keep track of all of the people who were applying for the job, because, you get all these emails, and I made pros and cons and what I liked about each person. And I was able to really keep a good list, really, to be able to see everything at a glance, because you can open each record so you can see everything about the person, as opposed to just having to scroll back and forth. You can open the whole thing and have all the data right in front of you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. Now, the last one is, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Well, I do think it is about being of service, really being able to think through, how can you help people? What are the questions that you're most asked, right? What are clients asking you? What are, friends asking you? What are you always answering? And if you take that and you're able to, be of service and say, hey, here's how this can help you too, that makes you stand out. That makes it a little bit different.
All right. Great advice. So, and of course that requires knowing your target market or audience well enough to know that what is it that they struggle with, or what is it that they need help with.
Sure. Right. Exactly. Really digging into, how is it that what you do is really helpful for them. All
right. Thanks, Paula. So what's the future for you and your business? Is there another book on the horizon, or I see you're doing a lot of workshops around media and pitching the media.
Yeah, I love doing workshops. I love teaching groups and things like that. So I'm hoping to put together a couple more group workshops as far as video production goes. And I do a lot of media training one-on-one, but I'm hoping to do that more in a group setting, so I can make it accessible to more people. And yeah, who knows? Maybe there might be another list book on the way. I can't stop myself from the list making. So it's
yeah. Okay. Well, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner then who wants to be a leader in innovation and in their field?
I would say to really seek out the best experts instead of, doing everything yourself and trying to figure everything out. See who's done it already. See who's been at the top of their game in whatever area it is you're looking at, and learn from them. Really investing in yourself to be able to, get mentors or get coaches or get people who can really get you to the next level faster has been something that I've always been interested in doing in my own business, but also as a journalist. Every story I've ever told, I go to the expert. Just tell me what we need to know. Break it down for me. And so being able to look at your business in that way too has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice. And like you say, there really are no shortcuts in business, but that is a shortcut. So don't sort of, whilst Google and YouTube are great and people do all these how-to searches, you don't need to figure everything out from scratch yourself. So
sure.
Seek out the experts. All right. Well, thanks, Paula. This has been really great. Where can people reach out to you and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. If you go to paularizzo.com, you can get my checklist for becoming a go-to media expert. And I'd love to keep in touch with you guys and see how I can help you get out there in a bigger way.
All right, great. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. So finally then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, I know you've already had Linda Ugolo, who's wonderful, and Terry Trespicio, who's fabulous, very, very fabulous.
We've had both of those and had a wonderful time with each of them.
Yes, exactly. They're very exciting people. I guess I would say, another person who just popped into my mind. She's a former anchor, and she runs a networking group for women here in New York City, and her name is Joya Das, and she gives a good interview. She really knows small business, and she's been out there, helping to serve people in the community here in New York, and she'd be a fun one.
Okay, so it's Joya, is it?
Yes, Joya Das. I'd be happy to introduce you.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Joya, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Paula Rizzo. So
wonderful.
Thanks so much for your time and your insights and sharing with us today on the InnovaBuzz podcast.
Sure,
Paula, it's been a great pleasure to have you here. I've really enjoyed it and made a lot of notes here and learnt a lot. So I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
Of course, you as well. Have a good one. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that fascinating and engaging conversation with Paula, and like me, found a lot of value in the information she shared. Paula's recommendation to focus on serving your audience goes across all the tactics she recommended to us, from overcoming a reluctance to be on camera, to crafting engaging headlines, to writing compelling articles or scripts. There are so many valuable tips and lessons in the interview. I'd love to know what you took away from Paula's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/Paula Rizzo. That is PaulaRizzo. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Paula Rizzo. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Paula there, as well as links to her website, to listproducer.com, to Lights Camera Expert, to her checklist to become a go-to media expert, and the other resources that we spoke about. Paula suggested we interview Joya Das, television news anchor and co-founder of Lady Drinks, on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Joya, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Paula Rizzo. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review, because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.